So, what's more important for financial success? Being a genius with numbers or just having good habits? It's a question that stumps a lot of us. But the answer, surprisingly, has way less to do with spreadsheets and everything to do with what's going on in your head. So, let's kick things off with a real-life puzzle. This is Ronald Reed. He was a janitor, a gas station attendant, and somehow, with no lottery win, no big inheritance, he managed to build an $8 million fortune. So the question is, how on earth is that even possible? All right, now this is where it gets really interesting. Let's put a story right next to Richard Fuscone's. This guy had everything on paper: a Harvard MBA, a top job at Merrill Lynch, the whole package. And yet, in this unbelievable twist, around the same time the world was learning about the janitor's secret fortune, this high-flying finance executive went bankrupt. So what in the world explains this? How does a janitor win and a Harvard MBA lose? Well, the answer isn't in some complex financial formula. According to author Morgan Housel, it's all about psychology. His book, The Psychology of Money, basically argues that our success with money isn't really about what we know, it's all about how we behave. And here it is, the central idea of the whole book boiled down. Financial success is a soft skill. Think about it. A genius who loses control of their emotions can be an absolute financial disaster. But a totally ordinary person with zero formal training can become wealthy if they just master a few key behaviors. It's really a game of character, not just IQ. So the first big idea we need to wrap our heads around is this crucial difference Housel makes between being rich and being wealthy. And trust me, they are not the same thing. Okay, think of it this way. Being rich is what you can see. It's the big salary, the flashy car, the huge house. It's loud. But wealth is quiet. It's the money that you don't spend. It's the stocks and bonds in your portfolio just quietly growing, buying you something way more valuable than a new car: freedom, control over your own life. And this leads to one of my favorite lines from the book, which just nails this idea. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. It's a total paradox, right? The very act of trying to look wealthy actually makes you less wealthy. Housel explains this with something he calls the man in the car paradox. It's simple. When you see someone driving a Ferrari, you don't think, wow, that driver is so cool. No, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. See? We use other people's stuff as a yardstick for our own desires, not to admire them. Okay, so if building wealth isn't about showing off, and it's not about being a genius, what is the secret ingredient? Well, the second key idea from the book gives us the answer. Let's talk about the most famous investor on the planet, Warren Buffett. We all just assume his success comes from this incredible, unmatched skill for picking stocks. But Housel points out that while his skill is investing, his real secret weapon is time. He's been a phenomenal investor for like 3/4 of a century. Okay, let this number sink in for a second. If Buffett had a totally normal career, started in his 30s, retired in his 60s, you probably would have never even heard of him. A mind-blowing 99.9% of his net worth was earned after his 65th birthday. That isn't just skill. That's the magical power of compounding working its magic over a ridiculously long time. So what's the lesson here? It's that finance is one of the only fields where the tortoise almost always beats the hare. The goal isn't to get these explosive, one-time, shoot-for-the-moon returns. It's about getting pretty good, solid returns that you can sustain for decades, and just letting that compounding engine do all the heavy lifting for you. All right, so if behavior and just sticking around are the keys, how do we actually do that in real life? How do we stop our emotions from completely blowing up our long-term plans? So how do you actually do it? Well, here are a few really practical ways to keep your emotions in check. First, automate everything. Set up automatic transfers to your investment accounts so you invest without even thinking about it. It takes the emotion right out of the equation. Second, tune out the crisis media. When the market tanks, the news is designed to make you panic. Just ignore it. And this is critical, know your why. Remembering your long-term goals, like retirement or your kids' college, helps you ride out the short-term storms. The whole idea is to build a system that protects you from your own worst instincts, like trying to time the market, which is basically impossible to do consistently anyway. And this all boils down to one of Housel's most important points. Aim to be reasonable, not coldly rational. The perfect investment plan on paper is completely useless if you ditch it the first time the market gets scary. a pretty good plan that you can actually stick with through thick and thin, that is infinitely more valuable. Okay, let's pull all this together with the final and maybe the most powerful takeaway from the psychology of money.
So here's the last big idea. Household calls it no one's crazy. The financial choices that you make seem perfectly logical to you. And why is that? Because even though your personal experience with money is this tiny, tiny fraction of what's ever happened in history, it makes up like 80% of how you think the world actually works. A decision that seems completely insane to you might make perfect sense to someone else based on their experiences. And these charts illustrate this perfectly. Look at this. If you grew up in the 70s, you saw stocks go to the moon. If you grew up in the 50s, you saw them go nowhere. One person lived through crazy inflation, another has only ever known stable prices. The point is, we aren't just playing with different amounts of money, we are playing completely different psychological games.
And that brings us to the ultimate point of this whole thing. The real goal of building wealth isn't about buying more stuff. It's about buying your freedom. It's the ability to wake up one morning and just say, I can do whatever I want today. As Housel says, that control over your time, that is the highest dividend that money can possibly pay.
So as we wrap up, I'll leave you with this to think about. If the greatest thing wealth can buy is control over your own life, control over your own calendar, what are you doing to maximize that dividend? What is your time truly worth?